Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Laik Siddiqui, the father of holophase. We are going to begin with a woven summary of what we have certified so far, in plain human language, with no new concepts added. Up to this point, we have certified that episode 14 is a compiler, not a story of what reality does. Only differences in phi inside licensed finite windows are speakable, never absolute phi. Every window must carry a passport, must pass coherence, must pass identifiability, must declare an honest ceiling called Nmax, and must price uncertainty or be revoked. Then we certified that differentiation on the circle needs local unwrapping by lifts, and only lift invariant results survive. Next, we certified that when global unwrapping fails, branch cuts are bookkeeping, and anything that changes when we move the cut is rejected. Now we proceed to part 16. We are still inside the absolute firewall. Nothing happens here. Nothing evolves. Nothing moves forward in time. We are not explaining the world. We are installing one more honesty layer in the compiler. This part is about one of the oldest tricks in the universe of measurement. A trick so convincing that it can look like a miracle, a discovery, a new law of nature, when it is actually just our sampling grid lying to us. The name of this trick is aliasing, and we are going to treat it the only way a serious compiler can treat it. Not as a footnote, not as a warning, not as be careful. We are going to treat aliasing as illegal territory. We are going to excise it, meaning we are going to remove it from the certified domain D, where derivatives are allowed to exist. Because if we do not, counterfeit structure will walk into our ledger wearing the mask of truth. Let us say the mission out loud, in one sentence that can be carried in the pocket. Aliasing is counterfeit structure, and counterfeit structure must be cut out of the domain before we certify anything. Now we repeat the compulsory toolchain line, spoken as one breath, because this is the spine that every part must obey. License window, then passport with coherence and identifiability, then Nmax and uncertainty, then local lift, then cuts if needed, then excisions, then certified domain D, then A equals D phi tilde, then finite jets up to Nmax, then invariance collapse, then topology and defects, then invariant basis, then stability and entities, then scale stratification, then escape test, then handoff. Part 16 lives inside the word excisions. It is one of the reasons excision exists at all. Now we build a story. Imagine we are watching a wheel on a cart. We have all seen this in films. The wheel spins fast, and suddenly it looks like it is turning backwards, or it looks like it is barely moving, or it looks like it stops. But we know the wheel is not doing magic. The wheel is doing one thing. The camera is doing another thing. The camera is taking snapshots. It is sampling. The lie is born in the gap between snapshots. That is aliasing in the simplest form. The camera is not evil. The camera is just finite. It cannot record the world continuously. It takes frames. And when the world contains patterns faster than the camera's frame rate can capture, the camera does not merely blur those patterns. It can turn them into new patterns that look slower, cleaner, and completely believable. This is what makes aliasing so dangerous. It does not always look like noise. It can look like order. It can look like a signal. It can look like a new oscillation. It can look like a hidden cycle. It can look like exotic structure. And the more brilliant our mathematics becomes, the more beautifully we can polish the lie. So we must be severe. We must be honest. We must say, if the sampling is not legally sufficient, the compiler will not certify derivatives there. The compiler will not certify jets there. The compiler will not certify invariants that were computed by walking through illegal samples. We will now state the core insight of Part 16 in the simplest possible language. When we sample too sparsely, our data can be explained by many different underlying realities. Aliasing is when we mistake one possible reality for the true one, even though the data cannot choose. This is the parallel universes idea, but we will keep it grounded and practical. Picture a melody on a piano, but we only hear every third note. From those notes alone, there are many melodies that could have produced them. If we decide we know the full melody anyway, we are not doing science. We are doing storytelling with numbers. Now translate that to our episode 14 world. Our raw input is not the world. Our raw input is comparator data. Differences in phi, inside the licensed window, stamped with a passport, priced with uncertainty, and bounded by n max. That already gave us humility. But sampling adds another humility layer. Because comparator data is always sampled in some way. It might be sampled in time, it might be sampled in space, it might be sampled across a sensor grid, it might be sampled across energy bins in a detector, it might be sampled across survey points in economics. Sampling is everywhere, even if we pretend it is not. Aliasing is what happens when the sampling lattice is too coarse for the structure we are trying to extract. We will speak the most basic sampling rule in audio form. We will not drown the listener in symbols, but we will keep the scientific spine intact. Here's the rule, spoken. If a signal contains patterns up to a maximum frequency f max, then, to reconstruct it uniquely, we must sample faster than twice that maximum frequency. In symbols, the sampling rate fs must be greater than 2 times f max. That is called the Nyquist requirement. Now we translate that to everyday language. If the fastest wiggle in the world is faster than half our sampling speed, then we cannot know what the wiggle really was. We can only know what our sampling grid makes it look like. And what it makes it look like can be completely different. So now we install the holophase compiler stance. We do not respond to aliasing by clever guessing. We respond by legal boundary. We draw a line. We say, where aliasing is present, that region is not part of the certified domain D. It is excised. Because derivatives are legal only where the underlying structure is uniquely supported by the sampling. Now let us connect this to the triunity reminder because we never forget it. Every certified structure has 3 readouts at once: omega, kappa, nu. Omega is cadence, the rate of change of comparison. Kappa is texture, the pattern of variation. Nu is drift, the transport of pattern. Aliasing can counterfeit all 3. It can counterfeit omega by making a fast cadence appear slow, or making slow cadence appear fast, depending on sampling. It can counterfeit kappa by creating fake textures, like stripes that do not exist in the real scene. It can counterfeit nu by making transport look like reverse transport, the way the wagon wheel looks like it turns backward. So part 16 is a triunity purifier. We are removing the places where omega kappa nu would become hallucinations of the sampling grid. Now we give the strongest everyday analogy, and we hold it for a moment so it lands in the body. Blinking. If we blink our eyes once every second while watching a hummingbird's wings, we will see almost nothing about the wings. We might see a blur. But we might also see a fake slow-motion pattern depending on when we blink. If we then draw conclusions about wing mechanics from our blinking snapshots, we will invent a hummingbird that does not exist. That is aliasing. Now, one might say, but we are not blinking, we have computers. The compiler answers, computers blink too. They blink in samples. Sensors blink. Detectors blink. Surveys blink. Everyone blinks. The only question is whether we know our blink rate and whether we stay inside the legal resolution that blink rate allows. So now we install the gates of part 16 in narrative form but with precision. Gate 1 is the aliasing detection gate. This gate asks a simple question. Did we identify where aliasing can happen in this window, for this sampling, for this stencil, for this bandwidth? We do not accept probably fine. We do not accept standard practice. We require a diagnosis. In everyday language, the gate says, show us your sampling speed, show us the fastest patterns you might be trying to describe, and show us why your sampling is enough. If it is not enough, show us exactly where it is not enough. This gate has three practical legs. First leg, Nyquist check. We compare the effective sampling rate to the estimated bandwidth of what we are measuring. If we cannot bound the bandwidth, we cannot certify a high-resolution structure claim. Second leg, stencil legality. Because even if the raw sampling is fine, our derivative operator can break legality. A derivative in practice is computed by comparing nearby samples, like a little stencil sliding across data. If the stencil spans a region where the sampling is too coarse, it creates counterfeit derivatives. So we must test that the stencil is legal inside the intended domain. Third leg, leakage and folding checks. In real life, signals are not perfectly confined. Windows have edges, filters ring, gaps exist. That creates spectral leakage, which is another way aliasing sneaks in. So we run tests to see whether high-frequency energy is folding into low-frequency bins. If any of these diagnostics fail, we do not argue. We excise. Gate 2 is the mask enforcement gate. This gate asks, once we map the alias zones, did we actually remove them from the domain D, in every computation, in every step, in every derived object? This gate is brutal for a reason. A single illegal region used in a derivative can contaminate everything downstream. So we require a mask map that is enforced like a physical wall. No derivative stencils crossing mask boundaries. No statistics mixing masked and unmasked. No, just a little illegal data. Gate 3 is the auditability gate. This asks, can another qualified group reproduce our alias map and our mask using our passport, our sampling description, our bandwidth assumptions, our stencil description, and our code or procedural steps? If they cannot, we cannot certify. Now we state the prediction of this part, without dynamics, in the episode 14 way. If aliasing excision is true, then many exotic effects that people celebrate will vanish when we excise alias zones and reprocess. Not because the universe changed, but because the counterfeit structure is no longer allowed to enter the certified domain. The failure signature we predict, if someone ignores this part, is also clear. They will report strong patterns exactly near the sampling limits. They will report cycles near the Nyquist boundary. They will report sharp features that move when sampling rate changes, or when the grid changes, or when the anti-alias filter changes. The results will be fragile across instrument lineages. Now we show this across scales, because our audience is human and our reality is fractal in failure modes. First, the everyday world. Take a phone video of a fan. Depending on frame rate, the blades can look like they bend, wobble, reverse direction. If we then claim this fan has a new mechanical instability, we have discovered nothing. We have discovered aliasing. Now the medical world. In MRI, there is a famous aliasing artifact, wraparound. If the field of view is too small, tissue outside the field wraps into the image. A nose can appear at the back of the head. That is a dramatic alias. But more dangerous are subtle alias patterns that can look like lesions, lines, or textures. If we treat every crisp structure in an image as physical tissue structure, without checking sampling and reconstruction legality, we can invent disease. The compiler will not allow that. The compiler says, show the alias diagnostics, show the mask, show the before and after. If the lesion disappears when the alias zone is excised or when sampling changes, it is counterfeit structure. Now the cosmic scale. In astronomy, radio interferometry samples the sky in a sparse way. It does not take a full picture like a camera. It measures pieces of the spatial frequency plane. That incompleteness creates side lobes, mirror sources, fake faint points. There are algorithms that clean them, but cleaning is model-based. If we claim a faint new object and it vanishes under a different sampling pattern or different anti-aliasing assumptions, we did not find a galaxy. We found aliasing. Now economics, where people often forget sampling is even a thing. If we sample economic data quarterly, we cannot honestly claim to see weekly cycles. We cannot honestly claim to see high-frequency micropatterns. Those will be aliases. Mixtures of seasonal effects, reporting schedules, calendar boundaries, and noise folding down into slow patterns. If we do not excise the illegal region, we can build a whole mythology of cycles that are not real. Now climate and paleoclimate. If a record is sampled every few years, and dating uncertainty smears the timeline, then decadal scale cycles can become ambiguous. People can detect cycles that are actually the sampling window function writing poetry. The compiler says, map the effective sampling, map the Nyquist limit, excise the zone below the resolvable period, and only certify what survives. Now, neuroscience. If a brain signal is sampled slowly, we cannot certify millisecond timing claims. We can tell stories. We can fit models. But certification requires that the sampling supports the claim. If it does not, the claim is outside the legal domain. Notice the pattern. Different fields, same sin, same cure. Now we anchor it back into the episode 14 formal vocabulary, but spoken cleanly. We are building a certified domain D. Domain D is the region of the window where our operators are defined and legal. If aliasing is present in a region, then that region is removed from D. That is excision. So we will now say the core policy as a spoken law. Alias zones are not uncertain. Alias zones are illegal. You cannot do calculus there inside the compiler. You cannot take derivatives there. You cannot certify structure there. If you do, you are certifying the sampling grid, not the world. Now we make one subtle point, because our framework is rigorous and we must be fair. Are there cases where something survives aliasing? Yes, sometimes coarse, discrete, or topological features can survive undersampling. For example, a very robust winding number might be visible even with coarse sampling if the defect is large and the sampling still captures a full turn. But even then, the burden of proof is higher. We must show stability under changes in sampling and under anti-alias processing. We do not get to wave hands. So our falsifier for this part is also clear. If someone can show a detailed invariant that remains stable even when aliasing violations are proven present and unexcised, and the stability is not because the quantity is coarse or topological or discrete, then our discipline might be too strict. But until that happens, the compiler stance is conservative and clean. Aliasing produces counterfeit detail. Now we must include at least one invariant stress test, because every part must. Our stress test here is simple and powerful. We take the same underlying phenomenon and change the sampling grid without changing the phenomenon. For example, we resample at a higher rate, or we shift the sampling phase, or we change the stencil size. If the extracted structure changes in a way that cannot be accounted for by declared uncertainty, then that structure was sampling dependent, hence counterfeit. We also test window refinement. If we refine the window boundaries or mask boundaries, legal invariants should remain stable. Counterfeit features will slide with the boundary like shadows at sunset. And we include the usual phi shift invariance reminder. Phi may be shifted by a constant without changing public meaning. Aliasing diagnostics must not depend on absolute phi, only on differences and sampling properties. Now we create the audit artifact for part 16. We will speak it as a ledger that a listener can imagine being stamped into the record. Audit artifact, an aliasing diagnostic report plus a mask map plus before and after comparison logs plus a counterfeit structure ledger. Let us describe it in a way that feels real. For every certified claim that depends on sample data, we attach a page that says, here is the sampling rate, here is the effective sampling rate after gaps and jitter, here is our best bound on bandwidth, here is where Nyquist is violated, here is the alias zone map, here is the mask that removes those zones from domain D, here is the list of all quantities that were computed before excision, here is the list after excision, and here is which quantities were thrown into the counterfeit archive. That counterfeit archive matters, because when we revoke, we do not erase history. We keep negative results. We keep the record of refusal. We keep the record of why a beautiful claim died. That is how the program stays honest. Now we land the carry phrase, because every part must give the listener one sentence they can repeat. Aliasing is counterfeit structure. If we want, we can add a second sentence that completes it. Counterfeit structure must be excised before it enters the certified domain. Now we must end with the revocation clause, clear and severe. Revocation clause. Any output derived from unexcised alias zones or from failed stencil legality or from an unauditable alias diagnosis is revoked and removed from the certified ledger, and the reason is written into the negative archive with the mask and diagnostics attached. We will also state what cannot be certified if this part is true, because that is our prediction without dynamics discipline. If this part is true, then any claim of fine detail beyond the legal sampling resolution cannot be certified, even if it is exciting, even if it is statistically significant, even if it matches a story we love. The compiler will refuse it. The refusal signature will be cut sensitivity to sampling choices and collapse under excision. Now we close the narrative in a way that keeps the listener inside the journey. We have now learned to do something that looks like weakness, but is actually strength. To say, we cannot know this from these samples. This is not surrender. This is the foundation of trust. Because a world where science admits its resolution limits is a world where certified claims become durable, replicable, and publicly readable across instrument lineages. And now we are ready for part 17, where we assemble all excisions together and define the certified domain D explicitly, the place where derivatives are legally allowed to live. One last note for listeners who want to go deeper, because we should always offer a doorway without breaking the episode firewall. If you want the formal work behind these compiler rules, you can find it on Zenodo by searching for holophase. Part 16 is complete. Aliasing excision is installed. Counterfeit structure is denied entry. The compiler stays clean. Always, peace be upon you.